Conas, how are ye? Welcome back to the Candlelit Tales podcast, where we tell Irish myths set to original music. My name is Sorcha, and in this episode we continue our series on the Fianna, the story of Fionn's Fianna, told by my brother Aaron. To listen to our reflections and chats, and to support this podcast, you can join our Candlelit crew by following the links in the description. But for now, Aaron, tell us a story.
Fionn stared up at the sky. After a sleepless night, he had watched it turn from dark into navy, and now the darkness in the west was being brightened lightly in the east by the rising of the sun. A scattering of clouds, almost as if they were painted in streaks across the horizon and the sky, that filled his heart with hope. This brightness that was lifting with golden, red, orange and yellow hues from the horizon line, as those lights managed to hit his eye, he woke up fully. Still bone tired, but mentally alert and awake. He wondered at what the day would bring. For today he was the leader of the Fianna. He had been announced this by the king, the High King, Con of the 100 Battles. And so everyone knew he was the one to lead the Fianna into their new way. But most of the Fenians were now Clan Morna, and they were all loyal to the Morna brothers, so he knew he had to sit down and talk with Gull and Conan. Hence the sleepless night. Young Fionn was not overly looking forward to these two brutish men looking down at him, grumbling, muttering, wondering what he'd do now that he was the leader. What would he do now that he was leader? He'd have to bring back Clan Bashna, the great clan that had been so prosperous under his father's ruling. Could he ever live up to Cumhaill outstanding leadership? Could he? Dardov had believed in him. And so he had managed to kill Caoilte, the fire-breathing and spreading demon from the other world. This creature that no one could understand how or what it was, had come to Tara, destroyed the fields and the halls, and yet Fionn had stood against it, had managed to use that magic spear to destroy it. And in full view of all of the rest of Clan Morna, Gull had announced that he would follow Fionn. He had to, of course. Fionn had done what he could not do, and so he rose with the rising of the sun, letting light all across the frosted earth. The cold ground made him bundle blankets and robes around him, but he placed his feet on the frosted earth and walked. He didn't know what he was going to say to Gull or Conan, whether they'd even be awake. When he knocked on the door of their rooms, well, he heard a grumble. Give us a few minutes. Hang on. So he waited for them. He was in the King's Hall once more. The night before had been so full of mirth and merrymaking. Much had been drunk, and only a few servants were scattered about the place, picking up the fallen goblets and broken cutlery and plates that had been discarded or shoved up against the walls and shattered in joy and jubilation. At least the hall hadn't been burnt down this year. A turn-up for the books. Now how could he follow that, Fionn wondered. As he was pondering and wondering how he might bring the Fianna together, bring all of the wonderful warriors that he'd heard so much about. He didn't see Caoilte the night before, or Cumhaill, And he knew Leia Lucra was in the forest with Baumel. His heart sank to think of them. But he wondered if they could reunite them, bring them back. Maybe their show of loyalty would help spur on the rest of Clan Morna and potentially even bring back the rest of Clan Bashna. And who else could be out there that might want to join the Fianna? As he began to smile, he heard the door swing wide. Well, there you are. I suppose you're proud of yourself for taking and stealing the leadership away from me. Well, you'll not get me down on bended knee. Gull's one eye glared at Fionn. But Fionn had expected this. So he simply asked for advice. What do you think I should do as a first act of the leader of the Fianna? Well, Gull was clearly shocked, expecting to be talked back to or argued with. He scratched his head. Well, I'm a good counsellor, that's for sure, and maybe if you keep me by your side, you'll do well. I'd go and get some of the old guard back. Some of those loyal to your father. They never really liked me, I suppose, so do that and you might curry enough favour with the Morna clan. But I'm not promising anything. Suddenly, Cumhaill came blundering out. Here, we're not leaving this fella really be the leader, are we? We can't do that. Not a hope, Asher, for folk. Look at him, he's tiny. He's a scrawny little yoke of a fellow with blondy, curly hair. And as he began to go on and on, Fionn bowed his head and said, I'm going to take Gull's advice. Great, solid advice. And I'm going to reunite Clan Bashna, Clan Morna, and get the old guard back. And after all, Fionn said, I do have my father's crane bag back in my possession. And maybe when the old guards see this, back in its rightful place, the magic of Manannán at my hip, the magic of the salmon of knowledge at the tip of my finger, perhaps many more will be likely to join and want to join this great Fianna that we will co-create. Head held high, he strutted out the door, hearing grumblings from Cumhaill and utterings from Gull, but they didn't argue, and they didn't want to fight. That's all Fionn wanted to prove, that they would give him advice, and they would allow him do what he needed to do. Dardove sidled up next to him as he was walking out the gates. Where are you off to? I'm off to visit a few friends of my father. I'm hoping to reunite the old guard and bring them back and potentially curry enough favour. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Would you like some help? Fionn smiled. Being cut off in speech wasn't something he was used to. Usually Leia Lucra had let him talk himself into tangents, but Dardove would do him well. Yeah. You can go and try and find Leia Lucra. She's in the Sleeboom Mountains. If you can find her, give her the message that I'm now the leader of the Fianna. He gave her the instructions and off she went, running in an opposite direction. His direction was to find Cumhaill. He hadn't too far to go up the river Boyne. He began to think about the goddess Boann walking along the banks of the Boyne, her ever-flowing, fast waters reminding him of her enduring power, inspiration, beauty, and her tenacious attitude. He would have to be inspired by her to be tenacious today, and for the rest of his days as the leader of this gang, this group, this army. It was an army after all, but it was more than that. And he had to figure out how to inspire those, not only to join, but to live in kind. Not the way the Morna clan had done, but to live with a moral code and a compass, something to guide them. He heard footsteps and turned to see a thin, grey man. Caoilte, the one and only. Caoilte MacRonan stood there, thin and tall and grey. He didn't look that fast, but, well, Fionn knew the stories. He could run as fast as the wind, and so fast it was said he could run in between worlds. Well, I heard you became the leader of the Fianna, like your father. So I thought I'd come down and suss you out for myself. Wasn't much a fan of Gull or Conan, especially not after killing Cumhaill. But you seem to have things in order. What's your first port of call? Fionn smiled to see him being looked up and down. He was being taken stock of. He knew it very well. This man was trying to find his measure, find his worth, and find out whether or not it was worth coming back to the Fianna. So Fionn shrugged, met his eye, and then looked away and kept on walking, calling over his shoulder that he was simply going to find a few of the old friends of his father and see if they'd like to come back and train properly and prove that they were still the great warriors that they used to be, but only the fit and healthy and agile ones. Some were obviously too old. Well, in a blink of an eye, hang on, who's saying I'm too old? You saying I'm too old? The two walked side by side, talking about how they might reinvent the Fianna. What would be new? How would he inspire these new warriors to come to the Fianna and to stay loyal to him? These were some of the questions he posed to Caoilte, and Caoilte was only happy to answer. Fionn was beginning to realise if he was going to have people to serve him and be loyal to him, he was going to have to ask their opinions, take it in hand, and respect every one of them without fail. It wasn't long until they came to a small house, a lodging built at the side of a forest. Beautiful oak tree growing, hazel all around, and a hawthorn tree just at the front. He knocked on the door, then the door opened, and a toothless smile greeted him. Blinking eyes, this was the old criminal. An old man ushered him in, and Caoilte sat down with Fionn. There you are now, the young son of Cumhaill. I thought you'd be around, all right. I don't suppose you've heard, said Fionn, that I've taken the leadership of the Fianna away from Conan and Gull MacMorna. Very good. That's nice to hear. They were useless altogether and good for nothing, really. Reprobates, and no one wanted them around. Well, Fionn said, I'd like to hear what you'd have to say about coming back to the Fianna, if you would be willing to serve again under my leadership. Oh dear, I think my fighting days are gone. Well, would you have a look at this? And Fionn pulled out the crane bag and handed it to Cumhaill. Oh my. Where did you get this? Well, along the road, Fionn said. When I was walking to Tara, I came across a woman who was being heavily bothered and attacked by a man. I stopped and fought him, accidentally ending up killing him as he tried to shove a knife in my heart. I twisted and turned it into his chest instead. I found on his person this. Didn't realise what it was until, well, I tried to open it, but it was fast closed. I still can't open it. But later I Well, I sucked my thumb, you see, and... Now, Fionn didn't really know how to explain this part. How does one explain that you have all of the wisdom of this world and the next at the tip of your thumb? All you need do is suck it, and you'll be enlightened as to what exactly is in your hands, or what exactly you need to do. It wasn't always the clearest messages, but when he had placed his thumb in his mouth, he'd realised that the bag he was holding was taken off of his father when he had died, by none other than the Grey Man of Lucre. A leader from Connacht, a man who had helped kill his own father and then stripped his body of his goods and taken this prized possession from him. But he couldn't open it. It was the crane bag. He was sure of it, but he didn't know how to use it. So he asked Cumhaill for his advice. Well, your father's crane bag. Oh, 'tis full of all of the magics of Manannán MacLear. I'm very glad it's returned to you. It should be with you. After all, you'll need it if you want to bring the clans together and really reunite the Fianna and make it all brand spankling new. That's what you're here for, isn't it? To find out how to open it. Fionn smiled, caught out. Of course he wanted to see Cumhaill, but he could tell that this man's fighting days were well past. And anyone who would join the Fianna, he would make sure they had to be fast enough, agile enough, strong enough, and have enough teeth in their head to bite an apple easily enough. But Cumhaill grinned. Oh yes, indeed, this was Manannán's bag, made after the Tuatha Danann woman Aoife. She was cursed, an old lover, jealous for her to be with another, made her into a crane for 200 long years. She flew to Manannán's island, and there he enjoyed her company until, sadly, she died. But he made the crane bag out of her body. Fionn knew this, but didn't want to interrupt the man, and he seemed to be in a good storytelling kind of a flow, so he let him go. Ah yes, and of course it holds all of the wonderful treasures of Manannán. Fraggarok the Answerer was his. Whether it's in there or not, it would have to be asked very well for this now to have it. Fionn looked at the bag and the size of it. Surely couldn't hold a sword. And then there was the bones of Aesel. Oh yes, the wine that always grew to full size, and once eaten, the bones put back into the bag, produced again, and they'd be full and round and ready for eating. Obviously the man was on a run, so Fionn just left him off at it. And there were many more magical items within this, gold and jewels, and whatever was needed at the right time Cumhaill could produce from this bag. He was surely getting to the point that Fionn actually wanted to hear, so he kept on leaving him talk. And of course, it can't be open at low tide. The bag responds to the ebb and flow of the sea, and only at high tide could you open it and ask for what you needed at the time. There it was, the reason he couldn't open the bag. He, of course, had his thumb, but it wasn't always the clearest messages, as he was well aware. He was still getting used to the power and wisdom of the other world at this fingertip. It was a strange thing to have, but he didn't always know how to use it best. But at least he had the crane bag. And Carbulg. This would surely convince Leia Lucre to join him, and whatever others who were on the fence about coming back and joining the Fenians and bringing the brilliance back. As he was beginning to get excited, Cumhaill said, "All right, now that's enough. Ye must go. I have my morning salutations to be doing and my chores and bits and pieces to be getting done. Go on now. Enjoy your adventures. I'll see you again, no doubt." Well, Fionn and Caoilte made eye contact, and they both smiled to be ushered out in such a manner. Well then, that was an interesting little stop. Where will you go next? Asked Caoilte. Fionn stroked his chin, rough and stubbly from days of growth, and he said, I'll go to the flatlands, because I think whatever warriors want to join my Fianna had better prove they're ready and they're able. I'll tell you what, seeing as you're so fast, you go on ahead of me. Gather as many as you can. Gather the greatest. Gather the brilliant warriors. Anyone from Clan Morna and anyone from Clan Vashkna who are willing to put themselves to my tests. Yourself included. Caoilte grinned. He loved the sound of this. So Caoilte ran as fast as he could, and he was a fast mover. In the blink of an eye, he was out of Fionn's eyeline, gone over the horizon, through the forests, and Fionn made his way down past Tara, towards the midland, into the flatlands. And he was looking for a hill, a vantage point. He wanted a place where he could put these great warriors to test. And there, on the hill of Allen, he saw where he could overlook the flatlands below. There was great forest filled with trees, Scots pine up the top, and brilliant alder and elder, the rowan, the birch and the oak. Brilliant. All of these trees would serve as ways to test his brilliant warriors, he thought. He'd have to test them. Night lingered in the sky, darkened, the sun set low, and Fionn, wrapping himself in blankets, having a warm fire, he leant his head down and slept and dreamed of fast-running feet and leaves on trees. When he awoke, he saw the leafless trees and the sky bright now with the sun rising, and he heard the sound of voices coming towards him. There was Dardove, leading a pack of young warriors. Leolucra is not coming, she said. She is happy to stay where she is, although she wishes you the best of luck. She said her fighting days are over and she'd prefer to stay with Baumel. She said you'd understand. But I did bring these. He looked around over her shoulder and saw no faces he recognised. He wondered at them, who they were, strong and boisterous. Many had now heard the story of Tara. It had spread like wildfire all over Ireland. And many wanted to know, was the rumour true? Was the son of Cumhaill now the leader of the Fianna? Were the Clan Vashkna and Clan Morna coming together once more? Would the Fianna be out in the summer of old and off adventuring like before? They had to find out. And there was many there, young and old. And it wasn't long before he saw Caoilte coming with a gang and a group similar sized, and even Gull and Conan came with the rest of Clan Morna. Many were now gathered, all of them here for Fionn's first instruction. Well, momentarily Fionn was anxious and self-conscious. He resisted the urge to put his thumb in his mouth in front of all of these men, though he wanted nothing more than to figure out exactly what he should do and be given divine inspiration and knowledge from the other world, but he was going to have to find that inside his own heart. He knew what he had to do. He had to lead. He had to show these men and women that he was worth following. All right, he said. Today we prove our mettle. If every one of you wish to live off the land in the summer months, every one of you will have to show and prove to me that you're capable of it. Sure enough, they all looked around. They all looked able-bodied, and they all looked eager enough to prove they were strong enough. What'll it be? A test of strength? Not a bother to me. I'll lift up that boulder and I'll shove it at your head. Conas laughed, and Gull laughed with him, many of the Morna clan giggling lightly. No, first speed. We'll have to run through the forest as fast as me, but all of you must braid your hair 100 braids. If a single one of those braids come out while you're running, and you're flailing around, and you're disturbing birds in the trees, or you're breaking twigs in the ground, you won't be fast enough, agile enough, or stealthy enough to join my Fianna. So, if you dare, follow me through the woods. Now Fionn set off at a blistering pace. As fast as he could he ran, and those that ran behind him ran brilliantly. And he led by example, not disturbing a single branch on the ground, nor breaking a single twig as he ran past trees. Not a bird in the branches was disturbed. And when he got to the very end, he turned and looked to see Caoilte easily striding behind him. He was holding back, he could tell, but he was still agile, stealthy and silent. Many more followed him after that. Not all of them passed that test though. Some stumbled through, broke off a branch, fell over, even had their hair messy. Well, Fionn knew the ones he would let go, but he carried on with the tests. The pole test next. Sure you're all strong, Fionn said, and well able to hurl weapons at an enemy, but can you protect yourself even without your weapons? A hole was dug, deep up to the neck of any tall man. First person was placed into the hole, and from 9 yards away the rest of the Fianna threw weapons at him, but he only had a stick to protect himself. Well, Caoilte was eager to show that he could defend himself, duck below the ridge of the hole, use the stick to ward off the tips of the spears and swords that were flung at him. It was no easy test. Fionn was worried that perhaps he might kill a few of the younger ones, but many passed. Many failed. That was fine. The last test was speed and agility once more. So running as fast as they could, Fionn held up a pole as high as his head. Caoilte holding the other side, his speed wasn't under contention yet. And so Dardove vaulted, leaping over the pole, and then ducking below a second pole held as low as her knee. She had to spin and turn and twist and pull a thorn out of her heel with grace and ease and land beautifully. As she did this, she smiled and cackled with laughter to see another man attempt this and fail. Oh, these are good tests, Fionn. I do approve. Now the sun was dipping low in the horizon. Those who had failed Fionn's test slumped off, sad and disheartened. But those who had passed his rigorous tests, they all stood around, bonded by their exertion, the sweat on their bodies, the heavy heartbeats, and the glint in all of their eyes. They all felt accomplished, they all felt more connected, and they all felt like this leader was one they would follow into any battle from this day onwards. A fire was lit, and Fionn gathered them. The coldness was coming in, but he had slept in this cold, the November air, not as brutal as he might have thought, with the warm embers of a fire keeping him warm. They'd sleep out tonight, with the stars above. Tomorrow we'll go to a hall of a king, and he'll be glad to see us coming. Tonight we'll sleep out, because tonight we'll share stories. We'll tell each other the stories of old, because I don't know many of them, and I want to hear your stories. Because as brilliant as any one of you are physically, fast, agile strength is not under question. But you have to have the heart. You have to have the heart of a storyteller to be able to transmit your emotions into a story for someone to understand and grasp. After all, you won't be able to get the patronage of a king if you're not able to impress them with the great valiant stories of adventures that you had during the summer months, if you can't inspire their imagination around the fire in the halls at winter. Every one of them looked at him, inspired to tell their story, to open their mouths and share adventures of old. But he held up his hand. First, before we go into our night of stories, we all must swear our honour code. For this is something that has come to me, and it is very important you all agree. They all looked at him expectantly, wondering what this honour code could be. And then he spoke the words that came to him. Perhaps it had come when he was sucking his thumb watching them race. Perhaps it had come in a night's dream the night before. Perhaps it came to him in that moment. Whichever way it was, he spoke from his heart. Glynna in our cree, Neart in our neig, Bart der air our mreer. They smiled and they repeated, Glynna in our cree. Brightness and lightness, purity of heart. Neart in our neig. They gripped their fist and tensed their arms. Their strength in their limb would always bring them in and together. And Bert der air our mreer. Actions to match our words. Dardov looked at Fionn. Fionn looked at Caoilte. Gull, Conan, and finally back to the smiling eyes of Dardov. There were many now gathered, and he would listen to many stories that night. And he knew this group of Fenians would be brilliant. They could change Ireland. They could defend this land from those who invaded. They could protect weaker kings and poorer people. They could make things fairer for all. As long as they stuck with this code, Fionn knew great things could come.